The Heart of It.
Roy West kicking in towards the centre.
A distinctly Tasmanian conversation.
I can feel what it will be like when Tassie plays his first game, and I just...
Lynch gathers, he's got loose men everywhere, but he decides to have a pump shot, and it's an absolute ripper! 200 goals for Peter Hudson. What a fantastic effort.
How did he do that? Bear kick finishes off in style.
Up towards half forward, Stewart flying over the top. Oh, pulled in a beautiful mark.
Well done from Scott. After all, Sheriff's got the first goal. Has it done?
Nichols has had the big ruck with it. Oh! Close roll!
Hello, welcome to The Heart of It. My guest today has seen just about everything in the football industry. Across a career spanning more than 30 years, Dana Howes has helped pull together some of the biggest events on the sporting calendar, from grand final days to Brownlow medals, even the Super Bowl. She also holds a deep passion for Tasmanian football. In this episode, Dana reflects on one of her earliest roles in the industry, working under Barry Breen during the glory days of the Tasmanian Football League. Her time at Carlton, including an extraordinary tale of how senior officials dealt with Tasmania's submission to join the AFL in the 1990s, the challenges of being a young woman in what was a male-dominated environment, and the toll of losing her job and her sense of identity when mass cuts were made at the AFL during the COVID pandemic. Thankfully, Dana's now returned to the Blues, grateful to be back doing what she does best, and she does it very well. Dana Howes, my guest on The Heart of It. Dana Howes, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We are at the Carlton Football Club.
We are.
Can you tell me what you do here?
I'm the event manager, so in a team of 3 in events, and the commercial team is about 24 of us.
So how many events would the Carlton Football Club do in a regular footy season?
Under our portfolio, we would roll out about 50, which would be the match day events, Carlton in Business, and then club major events, which sits across the AFL and AFLW. On top of that, there's another myriad of events which fall into our sort of membership categories, like Charlie's Crew clinics and our inner sanctum dinners and things like that. So as a club, we're probably running around, I'd say, 200 plus events per year.
Wow.
But our portfolio represents that core 50, the ones that probably sit out there in the ones that people like you would host for us on occasion.
And they're a lot of fun as well. And the bottom line for a football club, how much is what you do impacting upon the performance of the football club?
Absolutely none.
You individually perhaps, but what about all these great events you're doing?
I thought you meant the current state of play on field. I have no impact on that. I think it's really important because we're the face of the club, if you like. So all the touch points that events create is really important, like whether it is through a match day when you're dealing with, corporate partners of the club, through to coterie members and general members and just corporate engagement that we do through our events. So Carlton in Business is a whole other beast. It's made up of around 160 companies, and it's probably one of Australia's largest corporate business networks, and that brings together some pretty incredible sort of C-suite level executives who come together on a range of about probably 8 events across the year. So that's a really big part of what we do.
All right, your Tasmanian roots. So this is a mix of convict and Indigenous heritage.
Yes, yeah. So my dad's sort of the English heritage side, and my mum's sort of the Aboriginal line out of Waratah, sort of in sort of, I suppose, central Tassie on your way down to Strawn, that side. But my nana grew up in Waratah and was one of 17 kids there. Yeah, so there's
17 in the family. 17
in her, yeah. So they all kind of, that generation split out to sort of New Norfolk and Launceston, and it was my parents met in New Norfolk, which was so mum was went way back on the Tassie heritage through the Indigenous side, whereas dad's sort of the newer Tasmanian, I'd call him.
Yeah, the convict Tasmanian.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've been delving into this a bit more lately and finding out a bit more about your history, is that right? What have you found that sort of you've found fascinating or learnt that was new about your family's history?
Yeah, I think the number one thing, my mum passed about 20 years ago. She was brought up, and it can be hard to say this sometimes, but to be ashamed of her background. So when she was growing up, she left Tasmania quite young originally, sort of around 18 she came to Melbourne originally because she used to get teased a lot for being darker skinned and things like that. And it happened, she was also, there was a lot of, I suppose, marriage breakups and things like that. So there was a lot of different, she had a lot of half brothers and sisters and things. So I think for Mum, she found it really difficult to represent because she was darker skinned, and she found that when she was in Melbourne she was just treated like everyone else. So Mum didn't talk a lot about her Indigenous heritage. It's something that even since she died, and my role working in AFL and seeing how this heritage is celebrated and honoured and respected, I think, makes me quite sad that Mum didn't get to appreciate it. I've been going through the Ancestry.com kind of journey and talking with some of my relatives who have done a fair bit of it, like the DNA tests and all sorts of things, that it just kind of give you a bit of an identity as to the background of the family. And I've learnt quite a bit through them, just in terms of there's everything from identity swapping to family members that were sort of living at the back of the house growing up because you couldn't have the blacks at the front of the house and things like that. So really hard stories to hear, but at the same time I always think about how far we've come as a nation as well. And my cousins and that, we talk quite a bit about it, like it's something we're pretty sort of proud of, and it's a rougher background, but something we're quite proud of in terms of each generation overcoming a little bit more. Yeah.
Now, I sit across from you at the table in the offices of the Carlton Football Club, and you're wearing this beautiful necklace with a map of Tasmania on it.
Yes.
You've spent some time living in Tasmania, but the bulk of your life living in Victoria. Yet to talk to you, what about you personally? Where do you feel like you're from?
I would definitely identify as Tasmanian. I think all of my family, from my parents, grandparents, cousins, every family member I have lives in Tasmania. I'm actually the only one in Victoria as we speak. So it's been something for me. My entire upbringing has been about Tasmania, if that makes sense. So every holiday, my working life actually started in Tassie. I finished school in Melbourne and went down to Tassie to hang out at the Shearwater Country Club, to be honest.
Not a bad spot.
Just going to karaoke nights on Thursday night. I thought this is life. And I got an opportunity to work with the TFL back then, so the Tasmanian Football League. So not long after finishing high school, I actually got work in the marketing team, which Barry Breen was actually the head of Tasmania then, or Tasmanian Football League. It was quite a short stint in the end, which we can go into if you want, but I worked there probably about 6 or 8 months, and then there was an opportunity at Carlton to come back because I'd applied to all the Melbourne clubs as well. So I had a choice to make. I could be marketing manager of the Tasmanian Football League at 18 years of age, or I could come to Carlton and be a marketing coordinator and actually learn my craft. So I made that choice to come back to Melbourne then, thinking the long game, I'm going to learn more. I was having a great time in Tasmania, but I knew I had a lot to learn.
Marketing manager at 18 is a fair job,
yeah,
particularly
and I
in the climate down there at the time as well. It wouldn't have been an easy gig in those days, I wouldn't have imagined.
It was interesting, the TFL. Clarence were dominating, that's what I remember.
Won the premiership that year.
Yeah, there you go. So I ended up back here. But what had happened, I came from Tasmania to start my work in Melbourne. So there was just always that, and it was actually in the same era as Ben Harrison and Matthew Richardson, and I think the Gales were here, the Atkins were probably still playing, the Phoebe twins. Like there was this incredible amount of Tasmanians in Melbourne, and back in those days, everyone had ended up at the Metro nightclub, so there was like just a bit of a Tassie scene happening.
We are so good at finding each other too, aren't we? And the minute we know that you're a Tasmanian or you have a Tasmanian connection, you just hit it off straight away. Is that what you found?
Absolutely. There's a real, just an intangible connection is what I'd call it. Like as soon as, and first when you identify someone's from Tassie, it's, well, north or south. Like, so I find that's my first, like, I'll go straight into, are you from the north or the south, just to know how well this relationship's going to go. I know we're ruling that out, right?
It's not like that anymore,
No,
Dana.
I know.
You're talking to a northerner as we speak, and I feel like we're getting on just fine.
I think we are. It's the Bogues v Cascade, isn't it?
Well, I want to delve more into your experiences working at the TFL in 1993,
Yes.
wasn't it? But because the league was actually sponsored as Cascade Bogues in those days. I think that Tasmanian breweries may have owned both breweries back in the day, but it was one of those strange things to see the logo on the jumper of the TFL teams, and it would be both Cascade and Bogues mentioned on there, given what we know about people's allegiance to either, depending on where they came from. So what was it like in Tassie footy at the time? The State League started in 86, so it had been going for a few seasons by the time you got down there, but there were names like David Rees-Jones and Stevie Wright, and Peter Knights was coaching Devonport.
That's right.
Around the time that you were down there as well. What do you remember of footy in Tassie during that time?
I just remember the passion, like, and the crowds were decent, and there was just that real, I guess, the camaraderie between as well, like from a league point of view. Like, I remember we used to run some exhibition games too of AFL. Like, I remember like North Melbourne St Kilda playing up at York Park as it was then, and jumping in the car with Barry Breen and him playing Jimmy Buffett all the way up there, you know, but he was going off to the golf course while we all set up the
of course.
the event and what have you. But I just remember the energy around football, and that it just felt like it had so much I don't know, a bright future, if you like. The actual the TFL as a statewide competition felt really strong then.
How conscious were you of the sort of the difficult financial climate at the time down there? I think employment was very high in Tasmania during that era as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I remember as part of this role, and the league worked really closely with the clubs. It was really strong relationships throughout, and I actually did a bit of a role where I went out on behalf of the club sourcing sponsorships in the local areas. So I'd work directly with the New Norfolk president and go almost door knocking up Main Street of New Norfolk to get a $300 sponsorship to get your sign on the club rooms or what have you. And I did the same for Clarence, Sandy Bay and North Hobart, I think, at the time. But it was a real light touch point, but it was something where the TFL was sending staff out, and there wasn't a lot of staff, but to actually help the clubs drive engagement. So, and it was just a bit of a side hustle, if you like, from headquarters. So there was that real...
it's almost like a rattling of the tins sort of thing. It's like you would never see a league these days. That would often...
Be good if the AFL did that for...
Imagine that. Yeah. Let's get Andrew Dillon walking down
That's right.
Royal Parade rattling the tin for the Carlton Football Club. Not that Carlton needs it, I don't think. Maybe some others.
We'll stabilise.
Barry Breen, what was he like to work for? His era in Tasmanian football is fascinating because it also coincides with another pitch that didn't get up, one of many for a Tassie AFL team.
Yeah, he was the absolute alpha male, really. Like, he was a dynamic, energetic man to sort of work for, and I learned a lot from him, even though it was a short period. Ironically, it was Athol Hodgetts, another Tasmanian
Wynyard,
from Wynyard,
yes. Essendon footballer back in the day.
Yes, that's and the VFA, I think he was involved with for quite some time as well. But he was the one that employed me back at Carlton, straight out of Tasmania. So I found that really similar ways of working from both of them in terms of the, like, am I allowed to swear on the? It was
you go
in terms
for
of the, you come in and you just get shit done. Don't F it up. This is how we work, and it was all really hands-on, get in and do. There was a lot less meetings in those days. It was just doing. So, and that's where I was, as I said, fresh out of school, straight into these working environments with these really perceived, to me, like quite powerful alpha males, but they were giving me a go, and they couldn't have treated me better. Like, I know over time there's been, things have changed a lot, I think, on the landscape of how we work. But I just found that, I was a young woman coming into a male-dominated industry, but I would not have a bad word to say about any male that I've ever worked with across the time across the last sort of 32 years or whatever it is now, and come across all types, it can be empathetic, powerful, get stuff to, but I've really, I look back on those days with real fondness. And to be honest, they were quite harsh in comparison to how we work now.
Sure. Is that because of who you were and your experiences? Do you think that you were a bit more resilient than...
Possibly, yeah. Grew up with two, brothers and a pretty raw kind of family, I think. So yeah, potentially. I think it's you just get in and get things done. There wasn't too many frills about it.
Yeah. So when you reflect, you're grateful for the opportunities you got in that environment, but at the same time, do you look at it and see that the industry, like many others, needed to change from where it was?
Most definitely, yeah. And it took me some time to adapt to that as well. Like I found when I came into the AFL environment, like came out of clubland into AFL, I'd be quite surprised or stunned when certain things would come up around respect to women and, acknowledging cultures and all of that. So I almost had to sit back and just absorb and really listen to how other people had been impacted. When you talk about joking around in the office, and you've got to be careful about who you might offend when you're doing that. And it's been something where I've got to really put a filter on and say, it may not be it's how it's perceived by the other person as opposed to who it's coming from. So I think part of what I'm trying to say here is just you evolve with an industry as well. Like I've had to really, it's been growth for me to sort of, ensure that I'm working in the ways that you need to be working now. It probably happens to each generation though, right? Like as people come into work in the 60s, by the 90s things have changed. I came into work in the 90s, things are different now. So it's that, adapt with it as it goes.
Yeah, when you've been in it for 32 years and, people don't always get judged by the standards of the day. When people reflect back on behaviours of the past, it's sort of through a modern lens and it's perhaps a little unforgiving at times.
Yeah, that's right. And I wouldn't judge harshly on any era that I've worked over that time. I think it is what it was at the time, if that makes sense. So it's sometimes I think you do start to do full circle as well. Like I can see some ways of working starting to come back in as well, which is really interesting. So, yeah.
Well, it's the same on the field, isn't it? The fire and brimstone and
yeah.
Ron Barassi getting players up against lockers and yelling and screaming. And was that in some ways reflected in the back of house as well?
Oh, yeah, now that you say it, absolutely. Yeah, like you think of we recently at Carlton had David Parkin elevated to legend status.
True legend.
Yes.
Love it.
And he got up and spoke about or was asked whether or not he could coach in the current day. And he looked quite stunned by the question and was like, oh, no, I don't pat people on the back and ask if they're okay. He said that, and the conversation went on to say that his style was right for when he was there, but he certainly couldn't coach in current sort of situations and the way things are done now. So, yeah, it might come back around. Who knows?
You've mentioned David Parkin there, 1971 Hawthorn Premiership captain, but one of your first forays into working in the system was actually under Hawthorn's first VFL captain in 1961, Graham Arthur, who was a huge figure at the Hawthorn Football Club. How old were you? What was the role you did at Hawthorn and what was Graham like to you?
So that was actually during my VCE. So I was lucky enough to go to Carey Grammar for my 91-92 schooling, and I did work experience there. So it was all about sending letters out back then, and I pumped letters out to all the Melbourne-based clubs. And my stepfather at the time ran an antique shop in Hawthorn, so Graham had known him and sort of took me under his wing. And I worked out of the boardroom at Hawthorn with Graham for that week. And I just remember that would have been what lit my appetite to want to work in this industry. Like I think I loved footy. Like I always went to games with my stepdads, and that was Carlton games. So I was already a Carlton supporter, I suppose, at that time. But I used to I'd be watching a game and think, oh, someone's pulled this together. Like running the gates or running the luncheons like I was more fascinated by what was happening off the field than on. And that's at a time when I was deciding what to do, after school and with my career. And yeah, I think out of that work experience with Graham, it became evident that football was something I wanted to work in, knowing there was limited opportunities in terms of there was only a certain amount of clubs and positions around. So I worked really hard on sending letters out to offer myself to volunteer and things like that. So I ended up volunteering at Richmond, where my actual role at Richmond as a volunteer, I sat in the boardroom and took staples out of raffle books in preparation for their major raffle. And the boardroom was between sort of the reception of the club and the players' change rooms. So you just have coaches and players walking as you're pulling staples out of raffle butts. And I'm thinking, I'm sure there's more to it than this, but I'll just keep going.
At that stage, you're just happy with the people watching, are you? Looking, seeing these
VFL
VFL footballers rolling through and here you are pulling out staples.
Yeah, and Richmond that was pretty cool. And then I think Tassie came after that, and then back to... Oh no, I did a little bit of Carlton, sorry. But so Richmond, Hawthorn, Carlton sort of gave me these volunteer roles. Carlton we ran an AC Milan soccer match here at Princess Park. And I was part of doing the off-field sort of corporate spaces for that. And that was just a contract. It was my first paid role, I would say. And out of the back of that went to Tassie.
Wow.
So, yeah, quite quirky, but that's how it rolled back then, I guess. I never had any desire to study. There was a lot going on with Deakin University at the time, event management and things like that. And my actual score out of my VCE wasn't high enough to get into event management. So I thought, I'll just go and work. So I was quite established in event management by the time schoolmates were coming out of university courses. So, yeah, I was sort of four years in by the time.
Up and running.
Yeah, which was good.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've had time working in Tassie at different clubs, AFL Victoria then for a while. That then got merged in with the AFL. So you were essentially working for the AFL. Do you work on things like the Brownlow Medal and those big events at that time?
After I ended up back at Carlton from 94 until 05. So it was 12 seasons in that time. And then there was an opportunity to go to the AFL, and that was Gil McLaughlin was GM of Comops at that time. So it was sort of the 05-06 era. And that, for me, that was the next progression, because I'd rinsed and repeated so many seasons at Carlton in Best and Fairest and Family Days and season launches, and loved every minute, went from premierships to wooden spoons, and then coming into AFL meant suddenly, it's grand final pre-match entertainment, it's Brownlow, it's All Australian, it's Rising Star, it's club conferencing and all of that. The draft, I loved the AFL. Gil was another baptism of fire into the big house, as I like to call it, but ended up there for just under 15 years, which included the AFL Vic component, but I couldn't speak more highly of my time at AFL. It was an exciting entity. I'd say the best way I can summarise it is that working at a club is full of passion, but working for the AFL is full of purpose. So it's a big business. It's like, it's navigating like the 18 clubs and the member and fan experience, but even things like to this day, I still volunteer back with the AFL, just really to keep myself relevant with how I think about events, but also to keep the connections up and running, like around an All Stars or a grand final, like with live sites and things like that. Like really great environments to be working in, but also it's contacts. Like I might see you hosting something and go, he's a great host. He'd work really well in a Carlton environment, or you pull together a panel for your grand final shows or things like that.
Yeah.
So AFL is still something that's so relevant in what I do now. Yep. Yeah, Carlton's almost been the bookends of the career at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think watching the AFL evolve through so many things, from bushfire relief matches to AFL-X to,
some evolution's more successful than others.
That's right. And we had the thing in the end. So 2020 I was part of the redundancies.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd all been working up, just to. Did you want to go in chronological order? Jumping.
This is a traumatic conversation we're turning to now around COVID, so I'll let you go in whatever order you want, Dana.
Yeah, so I think just to explain the move to the AFL Victoria might sort of be more seamless. I had my daughters around that time, so found that with AFL national game there was a lot of interstate commitments and things like that. So suddenly there was a great opportunity to work at AFL Victoria, which was with Grant Williams and Stephen Reaper, and they were CEOs across my time there. And they were amazing men to work for as well. Just really, it was when I first started tapping into the flexible work environments and having two young girls, plus rolling out events in a football industry, which is weekends and night work. It was really nice to be in a fold that supported that. And this is probably the first experience of supporting women in a work environment, as opposed to from the moment I had my first child, to get back to what I'd been earning and doing previous to having kids was 8 years.
Wow.
So it just shows the impact, I suppose, of making that decision to step away, have kids, but then to become relevant again and work back into it. And
yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, so AFL Vic really nurtured me through that, and I was involved with like VFL and TAC Cup and community footy. Like there's 12 commissions of football around Victoria, which is run by the most amazing people as well. So I got to do a lot in that community space. I think that's what connected me back to Tasmania again. Because
you were doing some work with Tassie at the time?
Yeah, so Stephen Reaper was quite connected to all the state body CEOs, one of which was Scott Wade in Tassie. So at the time they were looking sort of more in an event consultant role that, because I had this passion for Tassie and asked so many questions and wanted to get involved, they plugged me in where I'd be there sort of fortnightly just to assist around not only community events but the, JJ List. Sorry, not JJ Listen, that's VFL.
William Leach, Alistair Lynch. We've had a few iterations.
It was the Lynch by then, not the Leach anymore, sorry. And that then evolved into Scott. After Scott was Trish Squires, I think, and then Rob Auld.
Yep.
And really good relationships there as well. And we ended up forming the Tasmanian Football Foundation when things were starting to ramp up around the talk around the 19th licence. So we had an incredible event here in Melbourne for Tasmania in 2017, which was about 500 people at Crown. Did you?
I was there. It was one of the best nights I've been to. And I actually think, reflecting on it, it gave a real jolt to the whole push for a Tasmanian team, because it was the greatest Tasmanian football love-in you could ever imagine. And all the greats were there. And Ian Stewart got up and spoke passionately about the need for a team. I think had no intention originally of speaking. In fact, had said no. And then by the end of it, felt so passionate about everything he wanted to speak. And Chris Fagan and Brendan Bolton and
Rodney Eade.
They were all there talking about how it needed to happen. And there were some quite prominent journalists in the room as well and that sort of, I think, helped sow the seed in their minds that there was a real movement happening here.
It was quite incredible being, and I'll have held in the highest regard James Henderson and his role with that. That was his vision, completely, in terms of the guest lists and the content and how he wanted Tasmania to be heard on a serious level again. As you know, I've brought in for you today a document that dates back to 1996 that was a submission to the AFL for Tassie seeking a licence way back then. And as you say, there's been so many attempts or pitches over the years, but this actually felt, hang on, this is real. This could happen. So it was wonderful to be a part of that. And that's one of my sort of favourite event memories in football.
Yeah. How did you feel when the Tassie Devils were announced?
It was, I was standing alone in an office in Carlton. Must have been a work from home day for people. But I was I knew what time the announcement was going to be, and I had the TV on, and there was a couple of people, but I turned up the sound and just watched it, and it was like a full circle moment. I feel the first person I called was my dad, who lives in Tranmere, just out of Belrive, and it was almost like, and I just said to Dad, "This one's for you and your mates," like because they've, long argued and lamented and talked about what should and shouldn't happen in Tasmanian football, but I think ultimately all they ever wanted was for Tassie to have a team in the AFL. So, Dad talks about going back to the 3 regions, and he talks about not having this and not having that, and there's more complaints than actual positive. But this was a day I think that was just for that generation that was still around to witness it. It was pretty special.
Yeah.
Dad himself played for New Norfolk just prior to the Peter Hudson era, and he did a shoulder injury at 16 or 17 or something like that, but he represented Tassie in quite a few games way back. So who knows what would have happened, We've all got a story. But Dad would be a big part of the reason that I've got this passion about Tasmanian football as well. It means a lot to him and his mate, all his fishing mates,
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so that's how I felt. It was an incredible moment because it was about the people who'd fought so hard for so long to see this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about what you've brought in then. So you've got this. It's an amazing piece of Tasmanian football history, to be honest. Just for those listening, can you describe what you've brought in?
Yeah, so I have I'm one of those people that holds on to everything. So I've got a garage full of paperwork. But this one was a letter addressed to John Elliott on the 6th of May 1996. And its title is the Tasmanian AFL Submission. And it outlines about how people should be supportive of Tasmanians' entry into the national comp. So it was sent to all presidents of the AFL then, and signed by Barry Breen.
And then there's basically a document as well, maybe 30 pages outlining the case.
Yep, the contents of 28 items, and it goes through everything from so it's actually called the Tasmanian AFL Team Task Force, what their role is, an executive summary, endorsements from the Premier of Tasmania, and financial assessments, all sorts of things. Like, it's a very well thought out
It
document.
looks it. So this letter, it's got a letterhead at the top, very professional looking, very nice sort of semi-card paper. Tassie, go for it, with a logo with a yellow football and a triangular map of Tasmania. Dear John, RE Tasmanian AFL submission. For many years, football people have been supportive of Tasmania's entry into the national competition. Barry missed his apostrophe. Tasmania's, unfortunately. Until this point, it has been only talked about. There is now a professional and substantial proposal before the Commission for their earliest consideration. Please find enclosed a copy of that submission for your information. Now, it's been stamped as received by Stephen Goff, who was CEO here at the time,
yes, yep.
9th of May 1996. How did it come into your possession, and what did Carlton do with it?
It was placed on my desk because I was the only Tasmanian in the office. I think we may have had Jeremy Smith on the list then, I'm not sure, or James Cook perhaps. But it was placed on and I asked why this had been brought to my attention or placed with me, and I was told I would be the only one that cares.
So do you think John Elliott actually even read it?
Not at all, no. And I think it was something that wasn't it wasn't on the active to-do list for what is an opposition club, if you like. Really interesting, though, in terms of, we talk about how things evolve, that with the 19th licence coming in, that had to get the vote of clubs, right? So, yeah, really interesting that back then it just wasn't something that was front of mind to competing clubs. So I think it came with a VHS, actually. I should dig that out.
Wow, I'd love to see that.
Should certainly give this to AFL Tasmania, I think.
That belongs in a Tasmanian Footy Museum, maybe something for Damien Dillon to get his hands on it at some point. That's brilliant. You did just briefly touch on the difficulties of around 2020 and obviously COVID hits the AFL industry and there are mass redundancies right across the game. That must have been an extremely challenging time to navigate your way through.
Yeah, ironically, I started 2020 AFL Vic had merged back to AFL headquarters the year prior, and that had been a bit of a a challenge to navigate, but we're feeling so good about 2020, and I actually had won a PD experience with the AFL where I went and worked at the Super Bowl in Miami in February, sort of January, February. It was something the AFL had done for staff over about a 15-year period, and I think it still happens actually. I'm not sure, but amazingly, you pitch for it, and then if you win the bid, off you go, and you work with a company called Populous over there.
What was that like?
Incredible. Like, what I loved most though, like you're working at one of the major sporting events of the world, but the people around it, it's humour, it's fun, there's the professional delivery and the very serious side of it, obviously, but when you break it down, there were people like you and me, we'd go out for beers after a 12-hour day at the Hard Rock Stadium, and there's friendships I made there that I'm still connected to. So that actual team will be coming out to deliver the game at the MCG next year. So I'm in charge of the bars. So I've already said I'll find the best spots in Melbourne.
So just in terms, just quickly on that, so how wowing is the whole experience of watching a Super Bowl be pulled together?
Yeah, and this may disappoint you because my focus was on all the off-field. Like, so you go into a stadium, what we call, and it has to become a clean or a neutral stadium. So you can't see Miami or Hard Rock or anything in there. So we've got all of the signage, quite often the internationals, as they call it. So there'd be people from England, Mexico, Ireland, Australia, and we'd go into the signage team. So it's everything from... So it's like if the Super Bowl was played at Carlton, for example, you'd cover up every Carlton, Hyundai, Great Southern Bank, Puma, Bupa logo that could be seen because it becomes a clean NFL stadium. So, and that's being done from about 4 to 5 weeks out from the game, and each week, by about 10 days out, it becomes what you call like a totally secure zone, and they've got the canines, the dogs, on security. So it's like going through airport security to go to work from 10 days out because of securing that environment. In terms of the occasion, I feel like I have been blessed, I suppose, to be around big events around the AFL here. So for me, it was taking it in the stride of that. Like, they made sure the internationals were on the field at halftime. So you had J-Lo and Shakira literally 30 metres from you. And that was it's one of those just stop, absorb, and be grateful for this moment. You know what I mean? Like, it was definitely go down as a highlight for me in terms of career and opportunity.
So from that massive high then to coming home to this catastrophe that strikes the world and strikes your very employment.
Yeah, well, I always used to joke that going to Super Bowl was like my gold watch from the AFL. Maybe this was the end. I didn't mean for that to be a worldwide pandemic, mind you. So came back and we actually got bushfire relief in that month, and then within a month of returning, never forget the day where, ironically, Gil called us all together to say we need to separate, like in terms of it's working from home indefinitely, we're navigating. I think we're coming into that first game where Carlton Richmond had no crowd. So we almost all immediately stood down. There was a core group, I think the execs and football, just to navigate what football looked like. But it was a really, really unnerving time because suddenly you realise for this non-essential word to come in, like suddenly you're like, yeah, what I do isn't essential. Like, what doctors and nurses and policemen and like, that's essential work. But what I'm doing, it's almost like I run parties for a living. Like, I just make sure people are having a great time. Like, it's like, so it was there was a lot over the 6 months to follow about, is this a chance to pivot? Do I need to do so? I thought, I become a teacher. Maybe I can, I think a lot of people just thought about what was next for them as everything just continued to sort of go down a slippery slope, I guess. Then the hubs were set up and a lot of staff were called into the hubs from the event team. There were 3 of us not called in. I don't know if I wasn't called in because I had kids, so there was an obligation to homeschooling and all of this.
Yeah.
I certainly made myself available because I knew that if if you were part of hubs, you were likely to survive the transition, because the talk was then coming in that we needed to be a skinnier AFL. I will never begrudge what the AFL had to do from a business point of view. Like companies were doing it all over the world, right, in terms of having to make choices and, cut staff down. I was lucky that I had long service leave, so I could live off that for that year, as well as JobKeeper, I think it was. But by August 2020, they'd made the decision to let go of about 200 staff from head office, and there were more around Australia as well. So it was really tough, because it was not only the loss of a job, but it was a job that was my identity, really, and my lifestyle, and people. Like, I just love people. So it was suddenly, you've been sitting at home for 6 months trying to homeschool. I think I used to just take the kids out on scooters because I don't know maths from English, So, so there was that real. There was a lot of people that were kind of over 40 years of age and more than 10 years service, because it was cleaning up the books as well. There was an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and that puts you in a sort of a dangerous position, doesn't it?
Yeah, you could almost see the writing on the wall. The tougher thing about it, though, Alistair, was coming back into the workforce again. It's like, well, my skill set was not employable as an events manager coming into a really rocky. Remember, in and out of lockdowns through 2021. I had a lot of people saying to me, "Oh, maybe it's time to do something else." I think I went for about 12 roles in football, whether it was stadiums or clubs, and I was runner-up on 7 occasions, having been told I was too one-dimensional in my skill set. Oh. Which I then ended up at City of Melbourne with in the Melbourne Fashion Week team, which is quite hilarious because I know nothing about fashion, clearly.
I like the necklace.
Apart from the necklace. But that ended up being sort of a 6-month stint. Learned a lot, worked with a really diverse group of people. City of Melbourne's a beast. It was a really sobering time, if you like, to sort of sit back and go, okay, a time of humility, I suppose, where it was like, I'm almost back to the start here. I've just got to put food on the table for my kids, like pay the rent, and I'd get the train into work, and it was a really sobering time. And I really missed, like, under government, if you go out for lunch and it's more than $50, you have to declare it and get it all signed off. It doesn't happen in football, so I really miss football. But I was lucky to get an opportunity back at Carlton, September 2021. Yeah. So that's where I landed.
Was it more enjoyable coming back in after what you'd been through?
I was I think I was that grateful for the first year. So I was often told by my manager, Adam Sapar, who's a stalwart of the industry. He's been at Carlton 18 years, incredible at what he does. He would often say to me in that year following, "We are lucky to have you here. You don't need to be grateful for this job." But I feel like a lot of the people returning to what they knew and loved were just so grateful to be doing it. So, and then you can suffer a bit of burnout because you put in so much because you're so excited to be employed and back and dealing with suppliers and venues and MCs and so it was an interesting time. Yeah. But it's 17 years between leaving and coming back, and same sponsors, coterie members, all of that. There were 2 staff members who were here when I'd left and were still here. The playing personnel, the coaching personnel, completely new, and the board and everything like that. So it was quite refreshing because I came in as a new starter at a new Carlton, but I had that familiarity of, Icon Park itself, as well as the history. I'll know more people on a match day or at an event than I would working day to day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's one thing that strikes me about you is just you got a great way with people, but then it's your relationships and you know everyone and they all love you, and which is obviously a very important thing because you have to corral people. And I want to, just as we round things out, I want to ask you a few questions about who you have found fun to work with and who is. I mean, you've had to put Brendan Favola into events. What?
That's fun.
Who are some of the challenging types, and who are some of the the rewarding types that you've used on events over the years?
My all-time favourite, and it's probably a very common one here at Carlton, would be Stephen Kernahan. He's like just been this constant icon of the club, and he's a beautiful person. Like he would do anything for the club. He bleeds blue, you know, like he's part of so much of what we do, and he's to the point I've watched his kids grow up, you know, things like that. That's what I've really enjoyed, you know, seeing like, you know, Barry Mitchell's son won a Brownlow. Like,
yeah, I mean, you remember the Kernahan kids and Tom Mitchell in the little creche here in your first stint at Carlton, don't you?
That's right. So I remember, I used to sneak them lollies and things like that. So it's
the Bradleys weren't allowed lollies, were they?
No, they were very pure, the Bradleys, but the Kernahans, they would go hard. So I think Sticks I couldn't speak more highly of. It's really, in terms of challenges, I think it's just more about navigating different personalities. Like you've got someone like, you know, I always got along really well with Bruce Doull's family. Bruce, I think he's been to the club twice in, you know, since he played. But he's one where you just respect that he's not someone that...
Yeah, very quiet, very private. Yeah. I mean, even David Parkin found it impossible to get a word out of Bruce Doull, and he was his coach.
Yes, yeah. And David's another one. I'd probably put him with Sticks. But there's been fun guys like Fraser Brown and Favola and, you know, Chris Judd I love because he's very smart, very witty, but he'd do anything for you as well. I wasn't sure what to expect from Chris because I wasn't here in his playing days, but since being back, he's been a huge support. They all get it, like whether the on-field team are up or down, they're still here to sort of assist with, you know, going on panels or joining high-end dinners or, you know, whatever is asked of them. There's others, you know, have a cap, like they'll do 2 things a year and don't ask any more. There's others that'll want 32 tickets if you ask them to, you know, walk in the front door. So you just learn to navigate, I think, the personality types. I love being in it, part of it. Yeah, just dealing with the people and the engagement and the experience. I love the experiences too. Like I'll get my camera out and be taking photos of everything we do now, and it's the 300th time I've done it, you know. So so I think it's passion, I think, that's kept me going in this industry for sure.
It's an amazing 32 years of experience that you have. Wonderful to sit down with you and hear a bit about your Tassie experience as well and your passion for Tassie Dana. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, and can't wait to see that 19th licence take to the field, hopefully in 2028.
2028.
Let's do it. I'll see you at the footy.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Dana Howes, one of life's great people. I hope you enjoyed hearing her football story. She's certainly seen more than most. For more episodes of The Heart of It, remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.